Hello there. If you just happened to watch the Godzilla rant where I was just complaining the entire time, this one will not actually be like that. This one's actually praising the film. I was surprised that Godzilla had enough money to make a sequel, and the sequel they decided to make was Kong, which got me excited for the third in the franchise, which turned out to be a complete letdown. But Kong was an amazingly well thought out film. It feels more like an army film, like a military-based film where you follow soldiers as they go through their routines, as they banter with one another. So that aspect is what sold it. The characters sold it. Kong actually had much more screen time. He sold it. He seemed to actually be a creature that could be hurt. That sold it. So it basically starts out with crowd. I always forget his name. The guy who voices Sully in Monsters Inc. He basically is considered this nut job, and he's trying to get financial support to go to Skull Island to find the monsters that live there, because he knows that the monsters are there. He knows that there are things out there far greater than humans. That there is actually an apex predators out there who will put the humans back in the Stone Age. So he wants to find them all, and I believe his goal was to kill them all, even though he's a part of Monarch, and it sounded like he created Monarch when apparently so that's one thing that's obviously confusing me, because it sounds like he invented the company which protects the Titans instead of killing them, even though he wanted to kill them. So I don't think he actually made Monarch, even though he said he did. He probably just joined it. Maybe it was just or I just misheard it. But I've seen this movie and enjoyed this movie several times, so I actually really pay attention. So he basically wants to go, and they basically he needs a military escort. Vietnam is just ending. And this is actually one thing I really like, is they end up calling a military soldier, an officer, who is upset with the outcome of Vietnam. Who seems like the type of soldier who wished he died on the battlefield. So when he's given one more task to just chauffeur someone to an island, he takes it greedily. And he is eager to find out that there is a monster there that he can fight. He finally has a chance to die on the battlefield. So it becomes enjoyable to watch him. You feel sad, though, for all his men who were glad to go home, being forced to follow this insane leader into battle. This man who wants to die. So many innocent soldiers died because this one leader wanted to go against Kong. And I think that's what actually makes this story so great. They have characters that are really relatable or understandable. They're much beloved because the humor between them. If you know anything about military movies or military people, they tend to find ways to joke with one another. They're people from all different walks of life thrown into one unit. So it becomes humorous to watch the way they talk to each other. So that itself was worth the ticket of admission. Everything there was just great. I can rewatch this movie several times just because of the humor between all the soldiers. Also, Kong. The first time he shows up, he's wrecking havoc, destroying all their choppers. Not only that, he is wounded. And the benefit of actually having this massive creature be wounded shows that it's possible for the humans to actually rise above. So here this allows Samuel L. Jackson, who's actually the insane leader of the platoon, I believe it's called a platoon, he basically becomes greedy and willing to destroy this creature. While there are two separate groups. There's the Marine-led group, and then there's the Tom Huddleston's group with Brie Larson and a few other people who find out that Kong is not actually a bad person. He just tries to protect his planet. He was destroying them because they were dropping bombs on the island. And honestly, I also found that strange. Even though it's a brand new island, you still have to survey. It doesn't make any sense. You still have people drop on the ground to make sure no one's there. You might end up killing innocent people if you dropped bombs. This is the 1970s. They didn't do things like that at that point. Well, give or take. So it's one of those things that it's a really enjoyable film. I enjoy the world aspect because there's this one part where they're fighting a giant spider. But that's one thing that also was the negative. I wish they had more of that. I would have loved to have seen them deal with more of these creatures that were on the island. Because one of the characters who apparently got stranded there in World War II was talking about how there's this weird chittering sound you hear in the distance, and he says that's an ant. I was excited to see them fighting ants. I would love to see them fighting bugs like they did in King Kong. So the King Kong Peter Jackson version. So I was kind of hoping for something that never happened, but we got bits and pieces of it. And if you ever want to see more of man against nature or insane nature, you go to the King Kong to watch, because that's where they got it to the top, to the max. Because it's not so much about King Kong, it was about them finding him and trapping him. So there was the journey to it. Here, they know exactly where he is because he's skyscrapers tall. One thing that I still find as an issue is his height seemed to keep changing throughout the movie. There's one part where he's taller than a mountain. There's another part where he's the height of the trees. It just seems to fluctuate throughout the entire film. One part where he puts his hand on a mountain, and it just seems to be bigger than any other time he's been on, or he doesn't put the hand on the mountain. You see a bloody handprint on the mountain, and it just looks like 15 times bigger than him. So it's just like all those little things. It's just like, you couldn't have just picked one size. You couldn't have decided on, okay, this is the scale we're going with. Don't go past this. But I guess when you deal with something like that, you run into that as an issue because don't entirely know half the time. Because did they actually plan it out? It's, he's 2 skyscrapers tall or 40 feet. No, it doesn't make any sense. They did mention the fact that he's still not fully grown, which makes sense because with how many times he shifted heights, there was no way he'd be as tall as Godzilla for when they were finally going to meet. So it was kind of a throwaway line that would help you realize, okay, so the fluctuating is fine, but he will be Godzilla's size when the time arises. But the movie's fun to watch. The movie actually does have you enjoying every bit of it because the characters are enjoyable. You feel bad when certain characters die. You feel bad when Kong gets hurt because you can actually relate to Kong. Unlike Godzilla, where you couldn't relate to Godzilla, or you couldn't even relate to the soldiers that were dying, or the humans that were being killed in San Francisco. Here, we have a smaller group of soldiers, a smaller group of one tracker and a photographer, a survival, someone who survived from World War II, and we care so much more. Might be because we had more time with them, or it might be because we actually had more flushing out of the characters. Even Kong we relate to because the story was just much better. Yeah, as you can see, I'd still have much issues with Godzilla. Big problems. This movie, however, great. Definitely recommend. And of course, if you want to watch the sequels, you have to watch this one. That's what's funny. Godzilla, in the Godzilla series, you don't need to watch. Kong Skull Island, you need to watch for the Godzilla series. Why? Because it actually is a far better story. Actually tells you so much more without throwing it in your face. And it's actually fun to watch. Thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Toodles.